Welcome. Ah, well, what we've got here is a model of Bluenose fishing schooner. What started out as a friendly gesture belongs to a friend of mine's in his office in downtown Newport. I walked by it one day and saw that the head rig and the bowsprit was what I thought was a bowsprit was broken off, or it wasn't even on there. The headsails are hanging down, and so I was up there on some other business and opened my fat mouth, said, "Oh, here, I better take this and fix it." So what started out as a small, what I thought would be a small and easy repair, it's now turned into a major project and pretty much a full new rigging job. Which I've already replaced the main standing rigging, gotten rid of all of how everything was hanging down. It's this sort of crappy white line here. It's not really rotten, but it's just crappy. And the jibs are out here over here. There's it's kind of a folk art model, something you'd find in a reproduction museum type store, something in Newport, for a couple of $100. You know what I mean? Well, now I already got more than a couple of $100 in it. But it was really kind of so bad that after I got it home and in here in the studio, den, living room, sitting room, dining room, marine art painting room, ship model room. Well, I couldn't repair it and send it back all messed up, the rest of it. So I might as well figure I might just make it look nice. So now I'm doing the four in the main. I did the main shrouds. We're doing the four shrouds now. We just try to make it look decent. I use for the main standing rigging here, I use a seine twine fishing twine, net twine. Get it in all different sizes, from this size to this size, larger diameter, smaller diameter. I have a drawer full of them down here. Different size net twine, more of it, that's smaller. Running rigging, wire rigging, lighter line. I have an abundance of Ashaway, what used to be old fishing line, Ashaway Cordage Company in Ashaway, Rhode Island, which is long out of business. I have a treasure trove of this stuff. And seriously, a treasure trove. When I see it, whenever I see any, I bought about 6 spools a couple of years ago, again online. I saw some very cheap. And I've also seen it very expensive. It's actually that you can't get it anymore, that Ashaway linen fishing line is what it was. Cutty Hunk, Zane Grey. They had all different names for it, different ones. It's beautiful stuff. There's an example. Beautiful 3-strand Zane Grey, Ashaway Cutty Hunk linen line, Zane Grey, number 12. Test 36 pounds, 500 yards. I've seen these for up to $300 and $400 for spool online. I got a bunch of it from Alfred Brownell and Sarkis Bazigian's ship model studio when Sharky died back in 2000. I was doing some work at the time, some restoration work, model restoration work for the United States Naval War College Museum in Newport. And the secretary of the curator at the time, director of the museum, happened to be a friend of mine, long-time family friend of ours. And she called me up and said, you know, there's a ship model studio over in Warwick, Commander Bazigian, blah, blah, blah. He's giving some of it to the museum, but the bulk of it the museum doesn't want and we can't use, and we were wondering, you know, would you be interested in it? So that's how I came across Alfred Brownell, who was one of America's foremost ship model builders, you know, in the 30s, 40s, 50s. And he suddenly died in 1958 in the middle of a number of projects. So I wound up with a lot of all his tools, photo albums, half-finished models that were bound for the Smithsonian, things like that. One of them I put in a diorama, shipyard scene. It was a model that was almost finished, not quite. But that's another story for another day. So right now I'm doing the former shrouds. Shrouds are standing rigging that run thwart ships. Stays are standing rigging that run fore and aft. This is kind of a folky model. I'm trying to do this with the least amount of hours that I can get away with and make it look halfway decent. It's not getting dead eyes and dead eye lanyards and all that. It's basically getting just taut shrouds down here, tied off with seizings like this. Tighten up a little bit. Usually pulling taut. Tie a couple of hitches on the way up. Temporary. Gets the shroud tight. And I tie them off with smaller twine to look like seizings. Depending on the scale, sometimes they are actual seizings. little bit of tension. They're going into eyes in the rail, so you don't want to go wanging down too hard, because then you pull the eye out of the rail and things like that, and you make more work for yourself. Tighten that up a little bit. There we go. Sometimes, if I can find them, sometimes you can use a clamp. Pull it a little bit tight. Clamp it. Tried to zoom it in, but it won't zoom. Okay, this one I got clamped. It's taut. Smaller twine. Seize it off. Tie it off. Clamp off. Make sure it's tight. Snip the end. I usually do 2 seizings, as it were, per shroud at the bottom, and depending on, you know, the scale and the model, obviously, sometimes I'll do 3, which is proper, and sometimes 4. This model's getting 2. That's 1 more per than I feel like doing. But, you know, like I say, it's, you know, it's a folky model. It's not an, you know, I'm probably approaching having more time in it than you could go out and buy a new one for. But the new one, even with new rigging, wouldn't be as good as this. So there you have it. Keep the ends. I do it long because it's easier to work with. You know, if you're doing this, don't cut just enough twine to work, you know, to try a little knot with. Give yourself some line. Give your hands some room to work. You got to leave enough in where you can pull the knot tight. You want them tight, you don't want them slipping. You want the rigging to look tight, neat, taut, all a tauto. Know what I mean? Clean job. I try to work at a fairly steady pace. You can only go so fast with this kind of thing. the idea is not to break things as you go along, but keep the work, you know, that you make for yourself to a minimum. You know, everybody makes mistakes. We all make mistakes. But you got to try and keep them to a minimum. Because mistakes on a ship model can be costly. Not so much in money, but in time. I mean, not so much in material, but in time. You know, what started this spar here was broken, was split. A long split, was broken in half, was hanging down. I thought it was the bowsprit. Turns out it's a staysail boom. I don't know where the staysail is. That's another problem we've yet to face. Because the staysail is not here and wasn't when I grabbed the model. It's 2 jibs, but then I figured out that's not couldn't be the bowsprit because it's way too small. It didn't fit in the hole. So I made a new bowsprit. Which actually wasn't all that difficult. It's a nice bowsprit, but I sacrificed one of my larger paintbrushes. I took the end off and sanded it down and went to work on it and made that bowsprit with one of my paintbrushes. It's the sacrifices I make. Okay. This is the last seizing on the four foremast shrouds. Okay. I haven't made up my mind if this model gets any rattlings at all. It'll get them like the old fishing schooners were done. Starboard side on the mainmast, port side on the foremast got the rattlings. That was it. That's what Jim Stevens told me when I was doing all the rattlings on America and Maine. On the schooner America. I re-rigged her in 1977. Yep, 1977. Winter 77, 78. I re-rigged the entire schooner America. And Jim, when we were doing the rattlings, I was like, Jim was like, starboard side on the main, port side on the fore. That's all you need. In fact, we didn't really need any on the fore. I didn't put them on the foremast. I just did them on the starboard side on the main because Carlos wanted some rattlings. So, what Carlos wanted, Carlos got. Carlos was the owner. He was building Schooner Jessica at the time, which is now three-masted schooner Adix. A-D-I-X. I believe was a Greek god or something. I'm not sure who Adix was. But I never understood why they changed the name of the boat, to tell you the truth. Jessica's a lot nicer name. Bad luck to change the name on a boat. Unless you give it back its original name. It's just my 2 cents. Okay. Them shrouds is done. Give them each a little twirl, a little roll between the fingers. Make them look nice and neat. This thing's on a tripod, so it's a bit difficult. So there's head rig and halyards and whatnot to go. But the head rig goes next after I get this starboard side done. I gotta do the starboard side shrouds now, so this model is a little long for me to turn in its universal vise that I have here. I have a thing called a panavise that these sit in. It swivels. It's got some adjustments at the bottom. I set the keel in the vise. And from there, you can move the model any way you want. I try to get it level, hence the levels. I put them around the mainmast there. And I'll try to get it level, both thwartships and fore and aft. Interesting. That other side doesn't have the same number of eyes. Doesn't have the same number of eyes that the port side has. So what we're going to do there, going to do is move this here. I'm going to make both sides the same, no matter where the eyes are. So we'll move that, tie that, get a little strain on it, put a half hitch. You can do a rolling hitch, but it's a little small to try and tie a rolling hitch. It's the first hitch, you try to get it tight. Give it a little taut, half hitch around itself. Other one holds it tight, get that up out of the way. Excuse me. Tight. A little hitch. Another one. Last one, taut. Fumbly fingers. Hitch. Hitch. Okay. Got those tied. They're taut. They're straight and neat. Okay. These are temporarily held in place. Now we go to smaller twine. Smaller twine here. If I can see any goddamn thing at all. Excuse me. Pardon my French. Excuse me, dear Lord. Not supposed to take the Lord's name in vain. Seize them off. Now I just tie them off. Make them look like seizings. Tie that tight. I use a square knot. One extra over the top, tight. Snip them off without cutting through the knot you just tied. Don't laugh, I've done it. I've also gone to cut the ends of the seizing twine and cut through the rigging that I just seized. Done that before. Those are the kind of things that you have to try and keep to a minimum. You might think replacing one shroud isn't a big deal, so you have to see all you have to go through just to get to it and do it. Comes a project. So limit limit your mistakes. And I rig them just like, you know, if I was doing the real thing. Set the mass in, the shrouds, and get the head rig done. Head rig's next after these. Seize it off. A little extra overhand. Almost a granny on top of a square. You don't want them coming off. And 2 is doubly as good as 1. Looks better. Do them in line with each other so they're neat. Ah! Wow. That was my coffee. Cover stayed on. Ain't that something? Tie them off, and you know, so they're even with each other, as you would on a ship. Neat job. And that makes it look better all around. Cut the ends off the tie that bind. Say, give yourself enough twine to work with. Don't tie the bitter ends of the other stuff in with it, though. That's not a very good knot. I could see that was a little bit twisted. I'm going to move that down a little bit so it's in line with the one behind it, aft of it. Get that tight. Tight. Throw a safety overhand over that. Tight. You don't want a great big knot. You don't want big long loose ends off your seizings either. You want to cut them as close as you can, but you don't want them untying themselves. And strange as it may sound, knots will untie themselves sometimes, especially on a ship model, these kind of knots. Second one, up in line, tight. Prom night. Yeah, so, oh, look, see, missed. Did not, tight. Snip the ends off. Close to the knot. I use a bull nose scissor. It helps limit the things that you grab or might cut by accident while cutting something else. Not long and sharp. You know, that if you're cutting something here and, you know, big long pointy scissor, well, you might cut something over here behind it. This twine is black waxed sail twine. I wax with beeswax everything. Some people don't. I will not even attempt to rig a vessel, a ship model ship, without a good chunk of beeswax right in front of me. And this is about the last of the big chunk that I have, and I need to go down to my hobby shop man in Middletown and pick up another couple hunks of fresh beeswax. Nice thing about fresh beeswax, it's soft as it sits around, and I've had this hunk of beeswax a long time. Years I've been using them. I'm serious, years. You know, it comes, you get a big hunk like that starting out, you know, and then that's really what's left of that. And I had to search to find this the other day because I haven't sat down at my ship model desk in far too long. But I've been painting, and anyway, I had to hunt that down, but I found it. But it serves a few purposes. It gets kinks out of line. It makes it look tighter than it is, and I just run it through my hand and over the beeswax several times. Any piece of line I'm putting on a ship model gets beeswaxed first. You know, through my hand, over the beeswax. This twine happens to be pre-waxed sail twine, so that's quite handy. That saves a little time, so I don't have to take the time to wax each piece. But standing rigging itself, the shrouds that I'm seizing off right now, those are all individually hand beeswaxed before they go on the boat. It protects the line from sun, etc. Ultra UVs, it helps protect it. Ultraviolets. And it makes it look better. It makes it look tighter. You don't have to pull it as tight. You don't have to wang down on it to really make it look taut. The beeswax does that for you. Now I'm taking off the bitter ends of the shrouds, you see? Untie it. Your little hitches that I had holding it tight, taking them off. Want to make sure you cut the bitter end and not the shroud we just did. I've done that before too. Don't laugh. Cut them the same length with each other. Follow the shear of the boat. It's not very far. You just follow the rail. The main thing is, you know, they all look in the same place. You don't want seizing up here and down here and over here. You know what I mean? You want everything uniform. Even the crew in uniform. Okay, got the bitter end. Pull it a little bit taut. Snip it off. Roll them through my fingers. You can almost give the appearance of being spliced. There's tricks for that too. I don't use that here. Seizing. Snip. Close to the knot. Untie my temporary hitch, which holds everything tight until you get your seizing on. It's hard to hold, you know. You have to kind of do it that way. the other thing about a bullnose scissor. Sometimes they slip off. All right. Former shrouds are done. That's more to follow. Cheers. Have a great day.